Don't admit fault at the scene of the accident. Do not apologize. Most people want to apologize immediately, and that's kind of a natural reaction. Do not apologize. That will be used against you. That is admission of guilt.
There's so many things that people do wrong, and it's not their fault. They just don't know, and that's, kind of why we're here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Galapo. Welcome to today's podcast. We're here today with Arlene Parra and Brian Klein, personal injury attorneys in Passaic County with the Passaic Injury Pros. Let's get into some great questions so they can help us with any personal injury cases. What are the do's and don'ts of filing a personal injury case?
So just to get started, I'll start with one do. Do document whatever you can as far as the damage to the vehicles, any markings on the street, any markings on your bodies as far as bruises or scrapes or anything like that. Document whatever you can at the scene of the accident and immediately thereafter. That would be my number one.
Do get medical treatment, especially if you're injured. Don't wait. Any delay in seeking medical treatment is something the insurance company is going to try to use against you.
Do obtain legal representation sooner than later. Ideally before you speak with insurance companies, because they will try to get a statement from you and get any information they can to use against you later.
Any other don'ts? Did we do any don'ts?
Don't admit fault at the scene of the accident. Do not apologize. Most people want to apologize immediately, and that's kind of a natural reaction. Do not apologize. That will be used against you. That is admission of guilt. So whatever you do, do not apologize at the scene. Apologize when the police officers are there. Just wait to get an attorney.
Okay, yeah, that's great advice because people, it's such an emotional moment.
It's a natural thing to do.
Yeah.
Along those lines, just don't admit anything that you've done wrong that you think could be wrong or could be construed as wrong. Anything that you say to the police, to the other driver, could later be used against you in court or as part of the claim. So make sure not to give any more information than is absolutely necessary. You want to explain to the police how the accident occurred, but definitely don't say, oh, it was my fault. I think I did this wrong or that wrong. Just keep it very objective and neutral as far as what occurred, and always be brief.
If someone said to you, I want to make my case as strong as possible, what are the top 3 things you would recommend for them to do?
Number one, I would say, would be to seek medical treatment as quickly as possible after the accident and complain about every part of your body that hurts, even if it's just a little bit, because anything that you don't mention within the first few days or first few visits of treatment, the insurance company is going to try to argue later was not part of the case or was not part of your injuries related to the accident. So complain about as much as you possibly can right in the beginning, even if you choose later not to seek treatment for that injury, or maybe it gets better in a couple days, at least it'll be documented.
And then in terms of seeking medical care, do you recommend that people go to their primary care? Do they go to the emergency room? Is there anything that you recommend in terms of that?
So obviously, if the accident occurs and you have traumatic injuries and you're offered an ambulance, we would always recommend taking that ambulance, going to the hospital, getting checked out. A lot of people walk away from the scene of an accident only to find out that they've been injured much worse than they initially thought. A lot of times, just following the accident, people are in shock, and they may not know the extent of their injuries. So, and the natural thing is, people are, they're worried about their car, they're worried about what's going to happen. Maybe they have a child or a family member that's in the vehicle with them, and they're just trying to get away from the scene. They just want to get home. They want the ordeal to be over. They don't want to extend that by perhaps going to the hospital or taking an ambulance. So I would say the number one thing would be to always, accept that ambulance, seek that medical treatment. And if you don't, then yes, follow up with a primary care doctor, go to an urgent care, have a family member take you to the hospital later in the day to make sure that you're just getting that treatment as quickly as possible, because you really never know the extent of the damage that could be caused to your body from an accident.
Right, you have the adrenaline going, right? And sometimes you don't feel the pain or what have you. That's very interesting.
That is a great question as far as primary care is, because a lot of people don't realize that car accidents in New Jersey are subject to a no-fault law, which means it doesn't matter who's at fault. Your own auto insurance, for the most part, primarily in New Jersey, will pay for your medical treatment. A lot of doctors, such as primary care physicians, don't want to or aren't familiar with the auto insurance process in obtaining pre-certifications and recommending treatment. So there are specialists that can be recommended for neck and back pain, podiatry for ankle pain, or an orthopedist for shoulder pain. Those will be the doctors and the specialists that can help guide your treatment specific to those injuries. So I would always recommend go to specialists according to what's hurting your body or what's hurting.
If somebody gets injured in an accident, especially a serious injury, what legal rights do they have that most people aren't even aware of?
First of all is medical coverage. A lot of people don't realize that there is medical coverage within your auto insurance policy in New Jersey for the most part. So even if you don't have health insurance, you are able to get medical treatment, and there are options to get you medical attention. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. We've had a lot of people come to us that refuse to get in an ambulance or go to an ER because they don't have health insurance and they're afraid of medical bills, not realizing they have coverage via their own auto insurance policy.
Let's talk about money. What actually affects how much compensation a person might receive in a personal injury case? Is it just about medical bills, or is there more to it?
There is more to it, but for the most part, the value of any personal injury case is in the medical treatment. I think there's myths out there that if you have a slip and fall in a large, well-known corporation or large store, there's $1 million case immediately, but people aren't realizing that the value is in the treatment. The more you're required to undergo, the more you're able to demand.
Yeah, insurance and medical bills are high.
Absolutely.
Any other thoughts?
And on the flip side, a lot of cases, especially car accidents, can have roadblocks related to insurance coverage. The minimum policy that you can have on a vehicle in New Jersey for liability, bodily injury, is $25,000, which is extremely low. Especially, pretty much any injury is worth $25,000 or more. So the most important thing really, following an accident, is to hire an attorney that's going to be able to, find other ways to get you compensation other than maybe just looking at the $25,000 and saying that's all we can get and settling your case. Because we also have other strategies to try to get the insurance companies to pay more than the policy limits in some cases. And, that's why you need to hire an experienced personal injury attorney that specializes in the field.
Why is getting medical attention immediately so critical, not just for your health, but legally speaking?
So essentially that is proof of the claim you're making, right? You're telling the insurance companies that you were injured, you've had to undergo all of this treatment, and you've been affected. It's limiting your daily life for reasons that we can go off on forever, such as it's affecting you raising your children, you being able to go to school, being able to go to work, drive your own vehicle. There's so many layers to it, but the sooner you get attention, the stronger your case is against the insurance company, because they're looking for any reason to undercut the value of your case. If you wait a week or a month to get attention, their defense is you couldn't have been in that much pain if you were able to wait that long. So it's just a quick and easier way to kind of attack those defenses against you.
Okay, let's have a scenario. Someone gets injured on a public bus or on public transportation. What should they do right away, and how is this case different from a regular car accident?
Public buses are almost always subject to closed circuit video surveillance. So constant monitoring of the inside and now usually the outside also of the bus from different angles. So what actually occurred is likely to be preserved as long as you notify immediately the carrier as to what occurred. So in New Jersey, there's a duty that is incumbent upon all persons to preserve evidence if they know that a claim is going to be made. So immediately following the accident, the most important thing you can do is notify the bus driver, notify the police if there's police on the scene that you've been injured, notify the bus company if you have to make a call or have someone take you to the hospital from the scene of the accident, immediately tell them that you were injured on the bus. Any way that you can document that immediately and make sure that the bus company's put on notice. Number two, obviously, is going to be hiring an attorney that's going to be able to get in touch with that company, whether it's New Jersey Transit, a public company, or a private company. A lot of times there's overlap. You're not sure who really owns these buses sometimes, but you want to make sure that you're, getting the word out that you've been injured on that bus at that date and time. Make sure you know what bus number you were on, what route you were on, and speak with a lawyer as soon as possible.
Talking about school accidents. If a child were to get injured at school, what should a parent know about filing a personal injury claim? And are these cases treated differently than others?
So similar to the way what Brian answered before and what I mentioned about immunities and protections, public schools and most schools have those immunities and protections that are in place. So number one is documenting it. Make sure you notify the school. They are aware that of this complaint of what happened on the school premises or on school property, and obtain legal representation sooner than later.
Makes sense.
Those cases can be extremely complex.
When someone hears the word damages in a legal case, what does that really mean? And can you break down the types of compensation someone might be entitled to?
Sure. So legal damages are often divided into multiple different categories. So the first category, and usually the most lucrative, is pain and suffering. Pain, suffering, and loss of enjoyment of life. So what about your life has changed? What pain do you feel? What have you gone through since this accident or this injury that you want to make a claim for? That's going to be your biggest area of damages. The second thing is going to be actual pecuniary losses. So wages. Have you been able to work? Have you lost time from work? Have you incurred medical bills, medical expenses? Have you had to hire additional people to help you to get through your day, such as doing chores around the house, things like that? So those are all what we call economic damages or special damages. And then pain, suffering, and loss of enjoyment of life is sort of like your general damages. It captures basically everything else that can't be measured in dollars.
What's one mistake you see people make way too often in personal injury cases, and why is that such a problem?
Apologizing at the scene of the accident when they know it wasn't their fault. It's a natural reaction, but I would highly advise, again, speaking with the other driver and, like Brian said before, keeping it short and vague with the police officers in describing the accident.
There's so many things that people do wrong, and it's not their fault. They just don't know, and that's kind of why we're here, is to guide them. But a lot of the first mistake that I see people make all the time is just hiring the wrong lawyer. They'll do a Google search and go to like whoever's most sponsored on Google, the top result, which is usually a mega firm, Morgan & Morgan or one of those types of firms. They'll hire one of these firms, and all of a sudden their case just becomes a number. It's a number in a system that's going through an assembly line, and they may never even speak with a lawyer. We've seen cases where our clients that came to us that claimed that they hired an attorney, they signed a retainer agreement, and they had never spoken with the actual lawyer. Happens all the time because firms nowadays are set up like assembly lines, basically. They're just marketing, bringing in clients, and then once they have that retainer signed, the case goes to a paralegal or a staff member, and the client may never actually get that real advice that they need, the attention to detail on their case that's going to find that critical fact within the first 2 weeks of the accident that could change the entire landscape of the case.
So if somebody gets a call from the insurance adjuster after the accident, what should they do? Should they not even pick up the call?
My recommendation would be speak to a lawyer before you pick up that call.
Another recommendation could be speaking with the insurance adjuster, because you do have an obligation to cooperate under the insurance policy. So especially if you haven't hired a lawyer yet, and you get caught off guard, you may have to speak with the insurance company. Always keep your answers short and brief, and keep in mind that anything that you say to the insurance company is going to be recorded and could be used against you in the future.
So this is something really interesting to me. So we live in a world of cameras, doorbell, cameras, dash cams. What kind of footage will actually help in a personal injury case? And then how do people actually obtain any kind of footage that, has been produced?
So dash cams have been proven to help a lot of cases, but they can also hurt your case. We've also gotten a lot of footage from regular ring cams,
Yeah.
in that when there's a car accident if a car accident happens right in front of your home and there's a ring cam right in that front door, you are able to request that, or you are able to knock on their door and politely ask if they will share that video with you. If not, you can request that the police officers go, but there is a benefit to this, again, documentation of these cases and documentation of these accidents, how it happened. All the more reason to get an attorney on it as soon as possible.
Everything is a sense of urgency, it seems. Yeah. So here's one that's a hotter topic right now. If someone is undocumented Do they still have the rights to file a personal injury claim? And what protections do they have under the law?
We get that question all the time in the sense of I get the call from someone who was terrified of reporting the accident. Mind you, they were not at fault. They were completely innocent. And they're just afraid to speak to the police officer or afraid to report the claim at all. For the most part, they do have a right to make a case. They do have a right to medical coverage. And they do have a right to obtain medical attention. All the more reason to obtain an attorney sooner than later to explain these options to you.
Definitely. And it seems as though that's an area that you specialize, right? It's near and dear to you.
Breaks my heart on occasion to hear those questions because they will wait weeks or months and they're in dire pain and they're just so afraid to get attention or afraid to ask for help.
Every person inside the United States is protected by the federal and state constitution, and that allows you to make a claim for personal injuries. So regardless of your status of citizenship status, whether you're here legally, illegally, you've overstayed your visa, none of that really matters. And it's kind of irrelevant to your claim for personal injuries.
So New Jersey has a no-fault insurance law that is confusing to some people. Can you break down what that actually means for someone who's involved in an accident?
So no fault is kind of like the name of a statutory scheme that came about in the late 90s. All it means is that if you're involved in an accident, your medical bills are going to be addressed regardless of who is at fault. It doesn't mean that you can't sue the other driver. It doesn't mean that the other driver's insurance company isn't ultimately going to end up paying for your medical treatment and bills. It just means that initially following the accident, regardless of who's at fault, and this only applies to car accidents, your insurance company picks up the tab initially for the medical bills. Now, a lot of times they'll go behind the scenes, and if the other driver's at fault, they're going to get their money back through a separate process. But the no fault allows people to not be left without coverage in the case of a disputed liability accident. So think, for example, you're in an accident and both drivers are saying they have the green light. The police officer, based on the damage, can't determine who's, obviously they couldn't have both had the green light. So the police can't determine who's at fault. There's no video footage. There's no other evidence or way to corroborate. There's no witnesses. And sometimes it can be difficult to determine liability right away in the initial stages. So then you have a situation, or you used to, where people's medical bills were not getting paid because the insurance companies couldn't agree on who was at fault, and they were both pointing the finger at the other one. So the no-fault scheme in New Jersey, and there's a few other states that also have it. New York has it. Many states actually have adopted it, or a similar scheme, allows for medical bills to be covered regardless of fault, so that people essentially are not left without recourse, especially people that don't have health insurance. And again, just to make it clear, when you're involved in a car accident in New Jersey or one of these no-fault states, in most cases, your auto insurance is going to be primary for any medical treatment. So you're basically looking to your own car insurance to pay your medical bills immediately following the accident.
Okay, so let's talk about money. Do clients need to pay anything up front to start a personal injury case with you? And what's the real deal with legal fees?
I love getting this question because consultations with us are always free. So I always welcome anyone. If you think you have a case, if you don't understand your policy, you don't know what coverages you have, please call us. It's free. At the very least, you'll get some advice for that case, if not moving forward. And for the most part, especially in New Jersey, there are no billables for personal injury attorneys. We don't bill by the hour. We don't bill per appointment, per appearance. We only get paid if you get paid. Essentially, we get 1/3 of the final recovery, or 33.3%, which means more for you, more for us. Another reason anyone who doesn't speak English is terrified of speaking to an attorney, but I always welcome them. Like I said, there's no harm in speaking to us. It's confidential, it's free, and at the very least, you'll understand your options moving forward.
So after a car accident, emotions are high. What are a few things people should absolutely not do after an accident?
Immediately after an accident, you should not apologize. Do not admit fault at the scene of the accident or immediately thereafter, especially if you're unsure of how it actually happened.
In terms of rideshare, if someone were to get injured in a Uber or a Lyft, who's responsible for that? Would that be the responsibility of the driver, the company, or someone else?
So the driver in an Uber and Lyft accident, if they cause the accident, is almost always going to be legally responsible for the accident. But the next question then is, who's going to be paying for the damages? Who's going to be paying for your injuries if you're making a claim? And that can be a lot more complicated, which is why it's really important to hire an experienced personal injury attorney right away that's going to be able to investigate the case, find out who's at fault, find out who the claims need to be made against. A lot of times in an Uber accident, even if the driver that's driving the Uber is at fault, there may be another driver that's also involved that could also be at fault, especially if you're a passenger. So it can be very complicated. It also comes down to whether that driver had a passenger, whether that driver was on an active ride, and how that driver was interacting with the app at the time of the accident. So there's multiple different factors and layers to determining rideshare liability. The most important thing is just to hire a personal injury attorney that can make the appropriate steps following the accident to determine what that driver was doing, how they were interacting with that app, who they were working for, and who was at fault for the accident, so all the appropriate claims can be made.
So before meeting with a personal injury attorney, what documentation should someone bring? And is there some sort of a checklist that you recommend?
So we actually do have a literal checklist in our office when it comes to intakes that we request that clients bring with them for the first appointment. The two most important are the police report and your auto insurance policy, or your declarations page in particular, because that'll tell us exactly what coverages you bought with that policy, so we can best explain to you what options you have, what coverages apply to you, and next steps. And for the most part, everyone can contact us via our website, call, text, email, DM, anything that works. We are on social media as far as Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
Wonderful. That's how I was going to ask is next, how can people reach you? And you'll guide them. So they're going to come in with the initial documentation, and then you're going to give them the checklist to make sure they have all the appropriate info. Great. Brian and Arlene, we are so happy that you came in to meet with us today and tell us all this great information about, if we get ourselves involved in a personal injury case. It's been really, really valuable, and I'm sure that the listening audience will agree.
Thank you guys for having us. We love teaching and educating the public and whoever comes to us, so it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.